Normally, when you want to install Debian, you go to the Debian website and you click on download or other downloads, and you either select a small installation image or a complete installation image, and you boot off this ISO, and this will give you a menu-driven installation which will help you install Debian onto your system. This is by far the easiest way to install Debian, is to use this method here. The problem with installing Debian using this method here is that it does not give you the ability to customize your installation. For instance, if you were to use disk encryption, you cannot change the cipher, the hash, the sector size, because the installer will not let you do that. There's no option to change that using this installer. Now, to be fair, the installer does have an expert installation process in which you can technically install Debian via the command line somewhat, but I've had tremendous difficulties getting that to work. The menus were very convoluted, and I couldn't get certain modules to load correctly for some reason. I simply gave up. So for those of you that were able to install Debian using the expert installation, I congratulate you, because I simply could not get that to work. So moving forward, I decided that there had to be another way to install Debian besides using this installer. And so I discovered that you can actually install Debian like you would install Arch Linux via the command line, and it's using a process called Debootstrap, and so that's what we're going to do here in this demonstration, is install Debian using Debootstrap. So to get started, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to download the Debian Live CD, which is over here. You can also Google Debian Live CD, but anyways, you select one of these, and I've already downloaded the Live FCE. So you download this ISO, you boot off the ISO, and effectively you will be inside the Live CD. Okay, so I'm already inside the Debian Live CD, and you can tell by going here, it says Debian Live User. So this is already the Debian Live CD using XFCE. Okay, so I created an installation guide. It's called Installing Debian the Arch Linux Way via Debootstrap. It's a fairly easy guide to follow, so let's get started. The first section here, if you want to install Debian, if you want to perform the Debian installation remotely, then you will need to install the OpenSSH server, add the new user, and then add the user to the sudo group, and then SSH to the Debian Live CD PC that is running Debian Live CD. So make note of the IP address of the Debian Live CD PC so that you can SSH to that PC. But we're just going to go ahead and skip this option here. Okay, so in this next section here, it describes various disk types or disk layouts. For instance, if you have a disk label type of GPT, then you would need a BIOS boot, which is here. If you have an EFI, then you will need an EFI partition, which is here. For this demonstration, we'll just create something like this here. So let's get started. Okay, so that's fine. So let's print that. Okay, yep, GPT. Okay, and so next we want to create the BIOS boot partition. So it's about 1 meg. Okay, and I believe the type is number 4. Yes. Okay, and now we want to create the second partition, and this partition will be the /boot. This is where your RAM disk will be, so let's create that. Okay, that's fine. Okay, let's remove that. Excuse me, let's print that. Okay, so you can actually make this like 500 megs, but I can afford 1 gig, so let's go with 1 gig. And finally, the third partition. This is where everything else goes, like your configuration, your vars directory, your opt directory, your home directory. This is where everything will go. Here is in the third partition. This is also where the Luke's partition will be, the disk encrypted partition. This is where it will be. So let's go ahead and create that. And yes, print. Okay, that's fine. And let's write that. Okay. All right, moving on. According to this, if you have a you need to format the /boot partition. So let's go ahead and do that. Okay. And if you have an EFI, you'll need to format that. Okay, for this next section here, this is regarding, this is actually very important. If you have a CPU that has AES encryption decryption, then you will want to go with something like this, and then you can add additional options here, or you can just accept the defaults. But if you have a low power CPU like a Celeron, a Core Dual, then you need to use a cipher that does not require AES encryption decryption. So for example, this here, the ADI Antum. This does not require this does not require a CPU that has AES encryption decryption. So for this example here, we'll just go with this. And I know that it's going to be on the third partition. Okay, and just a quick note here: if you want to look at your disk partition layout, you just do an LSBLK, and you can see that what you have here, and you can also see that I'm inside the Debian Live CD. Okay, so next step. The next step, we want to open the Luke's partition that we just formatted. Make note that the name of the name that you're going to give the Luke's partition is very important to the crypt tab file. So just we're just going to use the same naming convention that Debian uses from their installer. Okay, and Debian calls this SDA3 crypt. Okay, that warning's fine. Okay, moving on. Okay, so at this point you can configure your disk any way that you want in regards to the Luke's partition that we just opened. For instance, you can you can just do a make an extended file, for file system onto the partition that we just opened, or you can create an LVM like here. So for this example here, we'll probably want to create an LVM, because by creating an LVM, you have the option to create the swap partition inside the LVM. So let's go ahead and create that. Okay, and this here creates we're going to create a 2 gig swap partition. You can make it 4 gig, 5 gigs, however large swap partition that you want inside the LVM. But we'll just keep it at 2. Okay, and this here will consume the rest of the free disk space that's available. So, and this is for the root partition, not the slash root, but everything, every partition inside what we know as root, like for example, /etc /var /home. That's what's called root inside the LVM. Okay. And we want to make the swap file, swap partition. Okay, and then we want to format that root partition that we just created, and you can actually change this this here to whatever file system that you want, like XFS and whatever else file system that is out there. Okay, so let's stick with that. Okay, and let's do a quick check here. lsblk. Okay, there we go. So this is the BIOS boot, and this will be our /boot, and this is where our loops partition is. And inside the loops partition, we have a swap partition or swap LVM. And then we have a root LVM, which will contain everything else. All right, so moving on. So we want to install Debootstrap, and so let's go and copy that. Okay. And well, actually we downloaded that, not installed it. Here we install it. So sorry for the confusion. Okay, so after installing it, we're going to excuse me, after downloading it, we're going to install it. Okay, we get this error, which is fine. It wants distro info. Then we get another error. So let's okay, and now we can install Debootstrap. Perfect. Okay, so since we did create an LVM partition, we will now mount it. Okay, notice we mounted to a /mnt. Okay, and then we want to create the /boot directory inside the root LVM. Okay, and then we want to mount the second partition inside the root slash mnt slash boot partition. Okay, so what is happening here is we mounted this partition here to this mount point, and then we created the slash boot inside this partition here, or this mount point here. Then we mounted the real slash boot partition to this mount point here, this mnt slash boot. I hope that makes sense. But anyways, let's go ahead and move on. And of course, if you have EFI, then you'll need to do that. Okay, so at this point, we want to install the Debian base system. Okay, and notice that Debootstrap will install Debian in the slash mnt, which is where we want that to be, the slash mnt. Okay, so the Debian base system has been installed inside the slash mnt mount point. So let's go ahead and move on. Okay, so here this is optional. You can change the UUID to whatever you want. Well, actually, I mean, not whatever you want. It has to be in this type of format, but this is helpful if you were to if you had to do a reinstallation, but you wanted to keep the UUID the same as the previous configuration. So this is where this comes in. But since this is a new installation, we're not going to use this step. So let's move on. Okay, so now we have to change root into the base system. Okay, so once we do this, we're going to move out of the Debian live CD and into the slash mnt mount point, which is like being inside the Debian that we just installed. Okay, so let's take a quick look. Okay, looks good. Okay, so now that we're inside the Debian base system that we previously installed using Debootstrap, we now move on to the next step, and we create the fs tab file. Okay, and just make sure that this is correct. So this is correct. It's on the slash boot is on SDA2. That's correct. Okay, so let's paste it, and we can check really quick. Okay, and you can verify this number here using lsblk-f. let me bring that back. So right there, 711. 711, that's correct. /boot, yep. Okay, that's good. Moving on. And of course, if you have EFI, you need to do this step here. Okay, so now we want to choose the time zone. Okay, and since I'm in the US, I'll just say Alaska, doesn't matter. Okay, so now we want to sync the time. Okay, and we want to check the time. Okay, perfect. All right, so we want to install the locales. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. Okay, and then we want to reconfigure. And since I'm a English speaker, I'll select English. If you're not an English speaker, then you have to select another language or another locales. Okay. Yep. Okay. And now we have to create the sources.list file. So we want to install this. And then we want to create the variable. And then we want the here document. Okay, and we can check really quick. Okay, looking good. Bookworm. Okay, looking good. Okay, and run the update. Okay. And now we want to fill the crypt tab file. And like I said previously, the name is very important. So since we stuck with Debian's naming convention, which is this, so that's what we're going to use. Oops. Okay, and just to verify here, that's the correct name. And actually, let me cancel this. We can look here. Let me paste that again. Okay, yep. So yeah, we want that here. That's the name of it right here. So that matches this. And it's on this partition, which is here. So that's correct. Okay. So let's go ahead and wait a minute. They didn't really copy it. Okay, that's better. Okay. Okay, and we can check really quick. Okay, and so SDA3 matches this number here, which is right here, so that's correct. Okay, perfect. Moving on. We want to install the kernel. Now, since we're using Luke's disk encryption, you don't want to do this. You want to do this because you'll need the modules for the crypt setup. So and also you need LVM too. So we'll select that. Okay, so now let's move on to set the host name, and you can call the host name whatever you want to call it, but for this demonstration we'll just keep that. Okay, and now we want to create the host file. And we can check that really quick. Okay, so since we already installed the Debian base system via Debootstrap, you can all you need at this point is the networking package, and you're pretty much, if that's what you want, if you just want the console and the base system, then the networking package is all you need. But you can also use this step to install additional packages like Firefox, VLC, and so on and so forth. So and also make note here, don't install any bootloader or EFI packages here. It will be done in the next step. Okay, so for this example, we'll just install this XFCE. Okay, so let's move on to the next step. So here's your chance to configure or customize your configuration the way you want it. For example, if you install Samba, you can edit the smb.conf file. You can create a systemd service. Whatever you want to do at this point, you can customize it to your liking. If you're going to edit any of these files, you probably need to install a text editor like Nano. So just make note of that. So let's move on. At this point, we want to install the bootloader. Okay, this is optional. Set the root password. We're not going to do that. Create an unprivileged user. Let's call this yep, and password. Okay. All right, and yes, we want unprivileged user to be part of sudo. So let's install that. And we want to add our user to sudo. Okay. Moving on. configure the keyboard, or actually install it. Console font. Okay. And if you have multiple operating systems, then you'll probably need to install the OS prober. But since we don't, we'll skip this. Okay, so if you have an EFI BIOS, you'll need to install this. Since we don't have an EFI BIOS, we're not going to need it. At this point, you have multiple options here. If you have an EFI BIOS, then you'll probably need to use this option here. But since we don't have an EFI BIOS, we'll use this option. We'll use this option here to update grub. Okay, and then we want to update the RAM disk. Okay, and at this point we are done. So we want to exit the change root. Okay, now we're back at we're now back inside the Debian live CD. We want to unmount the /mnt, and finally we want to reboot. And if everything went well, then we should get the XFCE login. Okay, so it's asking us for the password for the Luke's partition. Okay, looking good. So let's log in. Yep, and there you have it. Let me go ahead and change the disk, display. So let's check really quick here. As you can see, my host name is my host name, which is very original. And let's see, LSBLK. Okay, so we're definitely not inside the live CD anymore. So we're actually inside the our installation that we just performed. So everything's correct. Yep. And we have a 2 gig swap, which is what we created. And let me open up a web browser. Okay, yeah, looking good. And let me click on whatever this is. And how about this? How about this? There we go. Okay, everything looks good. So we now have a very clean installation of Debian. We didn't use the Debian installer. Instead, we use a Debootstrap. We were able to install the packages that we wanted, and we were also able to configure the system the way that we wanted. So this is by far the most. It's actually the more cleaner method of installing Debian, because you don't need to accept any of the defaults from the Debian installer. You just install whatever you want, which is exactly the way you would install Arch Linux. Is the way that you want it. So So I would recommend this method for intermediate to expert users who are comfortable with the command line, and this is my preferred method of installing Debian. I don't actually use the Debian installer anymore. I use this method because I get the type of installation that I want, which is which is ideal for me. So anyways, everything's working as expected, and thank you for watching.